Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wiebe from Sportsnet. Sounds like Eric Engels is going to be able to make it to us. I was just talking with Ken, and now that he mentions it, Eric's probably had some time to write out the outcome of the game a little bit before it happened. But let's get at her, everyone. Let's bring in Kenny. Kenny, my friend, I'm back in the same province as you, at least for a couple of days. Great to be back. We had we got some work on the sound-ons, which again, we can't wait to introduce to everyone when we finally get them going. But how are you doing, my friend?
Doing excellent. Beautiful day here. I spent a part of the afternoon golfing at Breezy Bend, which is in great shape, and Corey Johnson got a good laugh out of me this afternoon when he fired up the Enter Kenny intro music while we were on the patio at a socially distanced level. It was quite funny. I had a good chuckle. And you got to like it. The tune is catching on, Tristan. So good news. Some folks think you got Bruce bang on there, including Rob Noakes here. And Rob, you're right. That is a very good rendition of Bruce right there. Greatly appreciated, and interesting opener here. I mean, obviously we knew there would be a little bit of a feeling out period, but Tampa was the team doing most of the feeling out in this one, Sean.
Oh, definitely. Hey, before we get going, Stephanie Hakeem says, Sean, who gave you permission to be this good looking? Flattery will get you everywhere on this show, just so we know. Thank you, Stephanie. If it's first time to the show, feel free to jump in and ask some questions. That would be great. And Ken, I've got interesting news.
Hey, hang on. Just wait until the headband comes out, Stephanie. He's got another real treat for you.
Well, it's interesting.
Oh, Tristan's here too. Tristan, awesome job.
Here. Yeah. So this is why I wanted to bring this up. So I got home, got a couple of days to spend with the family before I have to head back. And I'm supposed to put down the phone. So I parked the phone for a good chunk of the day until I had to get a hold of you with some, urgent news, which I couldn't because you were out golfing, enjoying, your moment, playing your music. Oh, that's what I wanted to. How do you get your music? Where did he get it from?
Well, he watches the show, so he must. I don't know if he downloaded it or just fired it up from one of the editions of the show or what. So, but honestly, had it on the loudspeakers. It was quite funny.
That's awesome.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good.
I love that. But so, anyways, I go and the first time, other than during our Kenny and Renny shows, that I heard from Tristan was on Instagram. He sent me a message, and it was the Sean's headband music, which I instantly fell in love with. And then you got jealous and you demanded a song of your own. No, he didn't do that. Tristan was just an awesome guy and gave something for Kenny, and that's what we got to play there earlier on with the Enter Kenny music. After Game 4, when the kind of crazy stuff was going, sorry, not Game 4, after the Habs' fourth win against Vegas Golden Knights, closing out that series in overtime with that Arturi Lehkonen goal. Couldn't get out of the building. Usually I would go back to the hotel and do those shows, but we couldn't get out, and I don't carry the headband on me when I'm working. So I didn't have it for that show, for that Kenny and Renny show, which ended up being the second most watched Kenny and Renny show that we've ever had on YouTube. Yeah, on YouTube, although with Eric's Twitter numbers, and again, Eric, if you're watching from Montreal or if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan watching through Eric's Twitter account, he should be up here. I've sent him the link. He'll be up here to answer your questions. But Tristan, knowing that I wasn't able to wear the headband, wrote another song for us that I have to share with you yet. For the times that I don't have the headband.
Well done.
It's great. He just keeps churning out the hits. I mean, we're going to have a friggin' Kenny and Renny soundtrack by the time this is all said and done. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. Anyways, great job. Thanks for that, Tristan. I I'm going to try and get some stuff coming your way because you've sent far too much stuff our way. Anyways, we'll get into this, and let's start with what Samuel says here.
Sure.
Montreal got outplayed all night. I couldn't agree with this more. I took a look at this game. We were having a conversation in our sound on. I find this a concerning loss for the Montreal Canadiens, maybe potentially their most demoralizing loss of these playoffs. And I'll say it like this. Not only did the Tampa Bay Lightning exploit the weaknesses that we saw the Vegas Golden Knights exploit, the shots from the point, those draws, the draw plays. Think of the Max Pacioretty goal. Sure looked a lot to me like that Nikita Kucherov goal. So what that tells me is that John Cooper definitely dug into the tape of the Montreal Canadiens playing the Vegas Golden Knights and said, okay, this is what worked for them. We're going to continue doing that. But then they just kept doing all the stuff that they do really well. And on top of that, they took a lot of the stuff that's typically the Montreal Canadiens' strengths and turned those to weaknesses as well. So you've got the neutral zone, which the Canadiens usually are the ones forcing turnovers. It was the other way around. The Lightning were forcing the turnovers and capitalizing off those. The power or the penalty kill, this vaunted Canadiens penalty kill that went into that game, the number one penalty kill of all time in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And they get scored on, clearly end that streak that they were on. But I thought the entire game, once Tampa Bay was able to set up in the zone, Montreal could not keep up with the puck movement they were able to generate. They weren't able to slow it down. Tampa was finding seams that we did not know existed in that Montreal scheme. And I said this, I took a look at the Montreal Canadiens players in the post game. I saw them after game one against Vegas where they lost 4-1. So let's keep that into perspective. They lost 4-1 in that game, and maybe it was because it was Shea Weber who I was watching most, but Shea Weber came out after that game and said, like, we are not worried at all, and it sure looked like they weren't worried at all. I thought I saw a little consternation on the faces of the Montreal Canadiens in the post-game presser today. But let's bring in Eric Engels, who will know the body language of this team, left, right, and center. Eric, how are you doing this evening?
I'm good. And before we get into the game, I kind of do want to get into what happened in the post game because I'm seeing a lot of people firing off tweets at us, and I'm not sure they understand exactly what happened there. So the first thing to explain is that Jake Evans was requested to speak Saturday and Sunday, but because he wasn't cleared for contact yet, he wasn't made available. And so people need to understand that when we have 4 people that are available for the post-game press conferences, this was the first opportunity we had to speak to Jake Evans since he was knocked out by Mark Scheifele in the first game of the second round of the playoffs. It's been over a month that he's been unavailable, and because he's there and because we're able to get quotes from the other 3 guys that are there, he's something that has to be covered off. His own story has to be covered off and discussed. Right. Maybe I'll write something for sportsnet.ca about Evans playing in his first game back, Yoel Armia's situation tied to that. And so we have to ask him those questions. And so the first question that got asked to him was by me. And I said, look, I understand. You'll understand, Jake, that, we haven't spoken to you since your injury and that this first question may not be strictly related to the game. But the question I asked him was if you could take us back to that hit, the reaction from Scheifele, and your opportunity to play in the Stanley Cup final, to return and come back to the Stanley Cup final. He just plainly said that he didn't want to discuss the hit, that he was thankful to the trainers, though, with the way they reacted and the fact that they gave him the opportunity in the work that they did in not rushing this brain injury that he had to get this chance to play in the Stanley Cup final again. And people were all over John Liu for asking a follow-up question about it. And this is just normal stuff, guys. Like, this is how the job works. We have to get those questions out of the way, and it's because tomorrow is an off day in the Stanley Cup final, and that story is going to get covered. Jake Evans is a story coming back from the injury that he had, and I'm really happy for him that he got to play, and I think we could all move on from it.
Yeah. Hey, answer this one quick here, Eric. Why didn't Armia play tonight after his negative COVID test? What was the decision there?
Well, Luke Richardson basically said that, with all the distraction of that situation, having to fly in on a private jet today just to make it and be in the building, he felt that it might not be the best headspace for Armia to be in. And the fact that Evans was available and capable of playing and a guy who could slot in well as a replacement for Armia, both on the penalty kill and at 5-on-5, they felt comfortable making that decision. He was prepared and ready. And I just think tough situation for Armia, obviously, not the way he wanted it to go, but he'll be available for game 2, and the Canadiens will make whatever adjustments they need. And I think one of them is going to have to be putting him back in the lineup.
Yeah, they missed Armia for sure. But to me, Eric, I think that Tampa's fourth line was really effective in this game. And that's not a knock on Montreal, but they basically turned the tables on Montreal in so many ways, right? In a lot of ways, the Canadiens got Canadian, at least early on in the game, in terms of puck management and turnovers at the defensive or offensive blue line. And how do you think Tampa was able to do that?
I just think they're a formidable team, right? Like, this is the best team the Canadiens have played, bar none. They're the team that I chose to win the Stanley Cup at the beginning of the playoffs because they were virtually unaltered, from the team that won last year. And the Kucherov was coming in after a lot of time rehabilitating that hip surgery, but a lot of time getting himself in shape and being able to run after a very taxing season for everyone. So that was going to be a big boost. But, the game looks like a terrible one for Montreal in almost every department, if not for the fact that their penalty killing streak ends at the end of it. Price has gotten to over 5 times. They do exactly what they said they didn't want to do, which is feed Tampa's transition. I think, you look at it in terms of the first couple of periods, they're going 2-1 to the third. They've managed to keep the game close enough that it's within striking distance. Bad bounce for Ben Sherrod on the third goal, obviously. The fourth one that came after was lack of focus, and that was the game. And I think the Canadiens will take a bit of the positive out of the good stretches that they had. The goal that they scored was managed doing exactly what they said they wanted to do from an offensive standpoint. They need to clean up the puck management part. And when we spoke to Luke Richardson at the beginning of the day, he said straight up, number one priority for us is the way we manage the puck, not feeding their transition, getting hit with their counterattack. And, they made 2 of those mistakes in the first 2 periods, and both of them ended up in the back of their net. And they made a third one in the third period, even with the bad bounce off Sherrod's hand and to Palat's stick, or I don't even know. I think Kucherov, I guess, gets credit for that. But, that was a bad play coming up the ice that turned the puck over and sent it back their way, and then ended up in their net. I think if you look at the game sheet, I'll pull it up right now. Total for Montreal giveaways in this game, 3. And those were the 3 goals that got scored right there. There was some takeaways from Tampa too, but the giveaways were committed in the neutral zone and the offensive zone and ended up in their net. It's the number one thing they said that they didn't want to do, and that's what my article will talk about when it comes out on sportsnet.ca. It's filed.
Quick one for me, Eric. Sean and I have talked about this. How come Richardson didn't try to make a more concerted effort to get Danault out against Braden Point? And now I understand that's a tough task when you're on the road and you don't have last change, but he was able to do that, and so was Dom when he was there in the first 3 rounds. To me, I didn't see a lot of them chasing the matchup, and to me that made it seem like they were comfortable with the matchup. Is that what you saw, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, no, I think he needs to do a better job of it. And I asked him after the game, how do you make that adjustment? Not only in terms of getting Suzuki, Caulfield, and Toffoli away from the point line, and getting Danault and that matchup against the point line, because that's the one they clearly want, but getting the Danault line away from the Yanni Gourde line, which is going to wear you down in the defensive zone and take away the energy you need in order to, when you do get out as the Danault line against the point line, be able to shut them down. So, this was a masterful job by John Cooper, taking advantage of what's available to him and setting the home ice matchups.
Agreed.
Luke Richardson, who doesn't have as much experience managing the entire bench and those matchups, even though his experience is limited, and so is Dom Ducharme's. Ducharme has a lot more experience as a head coach, not necessarily at this level, but at every other level. And it is something that he did a great job of, as you guys mentioned, through the other series. And I have no doubt that he'll be on the horn and he'll be in the meetings talking about the little things that they can do to make that adjustment. And sometimes it's as simple as just putting Suzuki and Deneau out for a shift together.
Agreed.
And pulling them off the ice quickly after you've gained control of the puck and throwing Kotkaniemi on. It's little things like that we saw Ducharme do.
They did that in the Jets series, I noticed, and that worked,
It's got to be incorporated. At the end of the day, though, you're not going to get the matchups you want for the majority of a game that's played on visiting ice. But there are a few times where you're able to do it, and you have to be able to take advantage of recognizing when those times are available to you and do it. Richardson said maybe on some icings or maybe switching up the rotation that we have can help do it. He also said the players, no matter who they're up against, it's playoffs, they have to compete. And I think there was definitely some elements that the team can clean up in that regard going into game 2. But Cooper took advantage of what was at his disposal, and Richardson has to do a better job on his end of that side of it.
Hey, I wanted to just jump into something because our chat room is talking about it quite a lot. Sergachev jumping on Brendan Gallagher and getting him to the ice. I mean, I don't know. I know that some people are saying they don't think this is a big deal. Some people think it's a big deal. This is the reason players aren't supposed to take off their helmets when they fight. I mean, Brendan Gallagher's helmet is off when Sergachev jumps him. And when he grabs him, he pulls him. And I'm not saying he did it on purpose, that he, bulldogged him down to the ice, although that's what he ended up doing. But I mean, this is the deal, right? If you're going to go jump on a guy who doesn't have a helmet and try and take him to the ground, and you're not pulling him to land on you, you're creating a scenario where the guy is going to land on the ground and has potential to hit his head. I mean, to me, this is pretty simple. I did not think this was an okay play. I was blown away he didn't have a penalty. If we're talking about head injuries and we're going down the road, and Kenny, both you and I have been on the record as saying the Scheifele hit was unacceptable for exactly that. What we know about head injuries, I mean, I don't think I can tell by the way you're shaking your head you disagree, Ken. I thought it was a BS play. I don't think you should be doing that. You don't jump a guy who doesn't have a helmet and take him down to the ice and try and land on top of him. What else would you expect to happen other than him hit his head and be bleeding from the ice?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not certain that Sergachev is even sure that his helmet was off, and I'm not. I mean, in real time, I did watch, and in a slow motion replay, sure, you can make that conclusion. Gallagher initiated the play, and I'm all fine with Gallagher initiating the play. That's what he does. That's when he's his most effective. I don't think for 1 second he was trying to bang his head on the ice. That's not the kind of player Sergachev is.
I don't think he was trying, but why would you not expect a guy to hit his head on the ice when he has no helmet?
I mean, I don't think that's why he was bleeding to begin with. I don't think it had anything to do with.
No, it was on the front of his head. The front of his head didn't bang. The back of his head hit the ice, not the front.
Yes, it did. He goes and he hits here and he rolls over. It's the point of contact. That's why he's bleeding.
We'll have to watch it again. I thought his visor actually cut him as his helmet was coming off.
Please check it out.
But more like, I don't know. I think as a post-whistle scrum that, Gallagher typically initiates and expects that he's going to end up on his ass at some point.
But isn't that the point of what Brendan Gallagher is he's a guy who's supposed to draw out penalties by frustrating other teams and doing exactly what he does. He initiates it. Someone takes it too far and they get a penalty, right? Like it's your job to stay within the rules. If a guy's irritating you, that's hockey. I mean, that's why pests exist. Kenny Linsman was around to try and get under your skin and have you respond. That's what Gallagher does. Doesn't mean that you can go beyond the rules. And maybe he didn't go beyond the rules. I just thought that if we're in a league where Ben Sherratt gets hit by Palat and his helmet comes off and he goes straight off the ice. Why? Why does that rule exist? Because they don't want players on the ice without a helmet for exact reasons like that. That's the point. So
then disengage.
His helmet came off as the refs separated them, and then Sergachev dives across at him after his helmet is off and drags him down to the ice. So my point is, if you as a league are saying you aren't allowed to be on the ice when your helmet is off. You got to get off the ice because it's too dangerous. Then a situation where a guy gets jumped when he has no helmet on and ends up bleeding, in my opinion, because his head hit the ice. I mean, that's got to take special consideration. That's just my point.
It's a roughing minor. It shouldn't have been on Goudreau or Coleman or whoever got the penalty. The penalty is on Sergachev. That is the miss on this play. It's not a suspension. Yeah. It's not a major. It's a roughing minor, and that's
I know within the rules it is. I'm saying it is a miss if you are the league to say, get off the ice right now. You have no helmet on. It's dangerous. Get off the ice. It is a miss to have that situation exist and then have a situation where someone jumps on a guy with no helmet and drags him to the ice. Fair. That it should be something that should be looked at. I'm not saying that within the rules right now. I don't think the DOPS is going to look at this. I don't think they have cause to because of the rule book. I'm saying in a situation where a guy has no helmet on, if he gets jumped and dragged to the ice by a guy and ends up bleeding because his head hit the ice, what else would you expect out of that outcome?
Well, the linesman can grab him then, fine, but scrums happen every play. Sometimes guys fall on the ice. It's just like in a fight. Sometimes a guy falls and hits his head on the ice. It doesn't mean that the guy fighting was responsible for the guy hitting his head. I mean, if you're going to engage, sometimes you're going to fall down.
All right.
Honestly. Anyway, next topic.
You're going to win points with Canadiens fans with that one. I think if you have to watch it again in slow motion, actually,
I watched it.
Got cut and how he got cut.
I'm very confident of my opinion on this.
It tells you how quickly things happen in that regard. I don't think Sergachev did anything malicious there other than try to engage in a post-whistle scrum where he gets a chance to get a free lick in, much like, Edmondson punching Yanni Gourde twice in the face after goes and it's late in the game and he knows that he can get away with it. And, he'll take a 2-minute minor just to get it in. Like, that's playoffs. That's part of it. I know what you're saying, and I know why fans are upset because they see Brendan Gallagher bleeding from his head and it's a bit of a dangerous play, but I think Gallagher knows what he's getting into too in those situations. So
I totally agree. And I do think that, what I see there is I think Sergachev, if you take a look at the slow-mo of it, Sergachev is pissed. He's pissed at Brendan Gallagher. He just wants at him in that moment. That's all that's happening there. But to my point earlier on, Brendan Gallagher's doing his job. He's going out there trying to get under their skin, trying to light a fire. I don't think there was a fire to be lit with that Montreal Canadiens team tonight. But let's move on because
let's go here, and I want to address this first. Alex,
yeah, so let's do
we understand your frustration.
Hold on. Let's do this once. This time, and we're not going back to this again. So let's dig into this. We're not going back to this in game 3, 4, 7. We're not doing this again. Let's get this conversation out of the way now, and let's all three of us weigh in on it.
Sure. Alex, is it unfortunate for a team playing Tampa? Yes. Until the rules get changed, you can blame whoever you want, but they did nothing wrong, and it's not you can't change it. You can't start the series. Tampa is -3 goals because they spent over the cap according to the regular season. These are what the rules are. I understand why teams would be frustrated. Some people think they manipulated the rules, but I am on record as saying this. If Nikita Kucherov was available for games 1 through 56, there's no chance in hell that one of the premier players in the National Hockey League is saying, you know what I prefer to play? I'd rather put my feet up in the air for 3 months or 4 months and then see if I can get to an elite level in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And if I'm John Cooper, do you think I want to keep some other player on the third line and not have one of my best players playing in the regular season? No, he was injured. Could he have come back 5 games sooner? Sure, but he was given extra time to get ready, and yes, he's leading the playoffs in scoring, so some people would be skeptical that he couldn't have come back 2 or 3 months earlier, but no one is sacrificing a year of their prime to not play. That's not how players work. That's not how elite players want to operate, and it's not how teams try to win. Yes, we know it's different than the Patrick Kane situation when he played most of the year, got hurt before the deadline, and Chicago added a player and Kane came back. I understand the frustration, but there's no way a player of his magnitude would sacrifice a year just to put his feet up in the air and so the team could keep Alex Killorn or Tyler Johnson or whoever they would have had to have traded. they would have found a way to make a move to be cap compliant. That's what teams do. But I agree with you. If you're unhappy with the loophole, let's try to get the loophole fixed. But this isn't a situation where Tampa's manipulating and 31 other teams are not. They use the rules to their advantage, sure. But no team wants to sacrifice its best player to roll the dice and see what happens in the first round of the playoffs, and you have to hope that Kucherov is going to play great. That's I feel strongly about it, yes. I understand why people are frustrated, but it's not as simple as saying Tampa cheated, because they played within the rules, and it's also not something where Kucherov said, you know what I'd like right now? A 5-month vacation. I'll see you in the playoffs.
Eric, I want you to weigh in on this, but first hold on. I just want to give you this shout out here. Tune in tomorrow on Spit and Chicklets to check out Eric. Eric's going to rock it. Like he rocks all the Kenny and Rennies, like he rocks all our chats, like he rocks everything I've seen him do, including and especially his food recommendations. But you got to have an opinion on this. Eric, jump in on this.
Yeah, I'm sure people are not going to be satisfied with the fact that I'm just going to wholeheartedly agree with Ken, but I'm going to take it to a whole other level. Braden Point had the same surgery as Kucherov and was unavailable to start the next season. In his cap negotiate, he had a contract negotiation going, but it took that long for him from the entire offseason after having that hip surgery to get back. I don't think this was a vacation for Kucherov. Like, hip surgery is not fun, and rehabbing from it is less fun. They waited, from when they were celebrating the Stanley Cup to the beginning of the season to make it happen, to make the long-term IR relief work in their favor, which makes them pretty much the same as like 20 other teams in the league this year, including the Canadiens, by the way. I know people love the Canadiens, but look, like Brendan Gallagher suffered a thumb injury with 6 weeks remaining, and they ruled him out immediately down to the end of the season just so they could take advantage of long-term IR while he was out. And yeah, it would have been hard for him to come back, but if you know anything about Brendan Gallagher, while the Canadiens were losing 14 of their last 21 games and 2 games away from the playoffs, still hadn't clinched their spot, I guarantee you it was killing him not to play. But yeah, like every team has used this loophole, and Tampa's not exclusive in that category. The Canadiens are one of at least 20, I think, this year that dipped into long-term IR and were over the cap technically. So yeah, the only difference is that Tampa kind of set things up to do it from the beginning of the year, but they were also playing through September when they hoisted the Stanley Cup, and then training camps got underway in late December. It's not like there was a huge window. And even if Kucherov could have come back a little early, we're talking about like a week, like it's not 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 months. John Cooper, which I'm sure everyone took with a grain of salt, said we'd be lucky to have him back at the beginning of the playoffs. But go back to the Point injury and the surgery that he had, and how long it took him to rehab and how much his season was in doubt starting on time the next year. There's precedent with this, and I think it was Tyler Seguin who just had hip surgery too and missed the whole year. So, you guys can figure it out.
It's a serious injury.
Guys, can this idea here, because I think a lot of people think that this is an easy solve, right? And it's not, because the idea of having a player go out and get injured is that you can use that cap space to replace that player so that you can make the playoffs. But once you have that player on your roster, you're going to go over. That's what makes it difficult to entirely abolish to keep the cap rolling through the playoffs. But I mean, does something need to be done here? That's the question. What I find is really interesting about this situation is, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I was reading about this the other day. Like, the Tampa Bay Lightning were a victim of this in 2015 when the Chicago Blackhawks used Patrick Kane's injury to go out and get Antoine Vermette and 2 other players who ended up being really, really key guys on that roster. And they end up getting, Tampa gets burnt by Chicago, who's way over the cap in this a very, very similar situation. And if I'm not correct, guys, Tampa wanted something done about this back at that time.
They voted to abolish the loophole.
They voted to abolish the loophole. Tampa Bay did. and we're not supported by the rest of the league. So right now, the rest of the league is getting burnt by Tampa, who said, well, if you can't beat them, join them, and now do it better than anybody else. I mean, they're fully within the rules of the league while they're doing this. Do we like it? I don't think so. I mean, I think something needs to be done to address the tax-free states and the advantage they have. So not only does Tampa have the tax-free states and the ability to spend more money, never mind have players, you know, like play down in the Florida sun compared to trying to bring them to Winnipeg or Montreal or Edmonton. But they've got that advantage, and then they're finding this advantage. But that's the way the rules go right now. The one thing I find is fascinating about this is the way our position has evolved on this. Because if you go and like Google in your computer right now, Chicago Blackhawks cap space 2015, and articles pop up that talk about like the impressive salary gymnastics that the Chicago Blackhawks are pulling off in this situation. And it's interesting how it's evolved, because if you remember, and I think a lot of guys will remember this, a lot of the girls watching out there was a time where people really felt it was unfair that the Chicago Blackhawks had built this really, really good team, and now they were getting punished by the salary cap and had to sell a lot of these players off for spare parts. The Dustin Bufflins, the Andrew Ladds, the Michael Frolikes. That's just Winnipeg guys that I'm talking about, right?
Well, they stirred up that restricted free agent situation pretty good, which contributed to that situation. But yes, your point is valid.
Right. So, but I think a lot of time, I think back in 2015, people were empathizing with the Chicago Blackhawks and saying that the salary cap was unfair, that good teams had to lose players. It's interesting how it's evolved over the 6 years since that. We're at the stage now where we take a look at Tampa Bay, who is doing the exact same thing Chicago did to beat them in the 2015 Cup final in 6 games. And now we look at the Tampa Bay Lightning as the bad guys in this, where we almost looked at Chicago as the victims in 2015. Anyways, let's move on to something else. We're not addressing that again.
Talking about it again.
Let's talk about the game.
We're not going back to that. So I hope everyone's happy with that. We knew we were going to have that conversation, and people will try and bring it up every show from now on. We're not going back to that. Spread the word across the land.
And sorry, would we like the loophole changed? Sure. Nobody's saying it's a good loophole, but don't say the one team is cheating better than the next.
Yeah.
I kind of like it. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be the heel in this whole thing, but I kind of like it. Like, I think it's genius management, to be honest with you, that to call it a loophole, I guess technically it is one, but, the cap is set up in such a manner that if for whatever reason your player can return, you've got to clear out the space to get him back in. And, it creates a situation where you are making decisions that have long and short-term implications. You're taking risks. In this particular situation, the Lightning knew, like Kucherov, the chances he'd be back, the best chance he'd be back would be with like 1 week left in the season. So, it solved a huge problem for them. They were going to have to trade Stamkos, so they were going to have to trade probably John Cooper's favorite player in Alex Killorn, and they've got an opportunity to win again. And believe me, like Ken said off the hop, and this is the last thing I'll say about it, like, if you don't think John Cooper wanted to have Nikita Kucherov at his disposal for the season, like you're on something. Like, you got to be crazy. This guy is, to me, where does Kucherov rank for you guys in the top players in the world? Because for me, like, I know people stare at McDavid and McKinnon and talk about Crosby. Like, I think Kucherov could easily win an argument for the best player in the world. I think he is the best player in the world, like right now, and he was last year too. So I don't know.
He's exceptional, and he is getting better.
I did not do that, but to be honest with you, Sean and I have been working extremely late hours and working around the clock. And if I take him to Mimesso's for a sub, which is a divine experience, he needs at least a 3 to 4 hour nap after that. And I don't want to knock him out. But I love Sergio. He's a good friend. And that place is an institution that if Sean gets an off day in Montreal and doesn't have to work as much as he was while he was here, I'll be sure to send him that way. For myself, I'm going on a strict diet that doesn't include eating Mimesso subs.
Okay. I'll get it. I'll get it. I will find a way to get it while I'm in town.
Why don't we talk about, like, why don't people mention Kucherov in the top player in the world conversation?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, for sure.
The guy,
For sure.
he
Especially what he does
ran
in
away with
playoffs.
the Hart Trophy, a year ago, or a couple years ago, whatever it was. Now I can't. It's all bleeds together now in my brain. But like, this guy is ridiculous. Like, he's unbelievable.
We saw why tonight, Eric, when you read his clips in the in the Google Doc today about following the game plan. And I'm not being I'm not being flippant. I think part of the problem for Kucherov is that he's not a media darling. He is not in he's in the highlight reel packs, but he's not in the promotional packs, and that's part of the problem.
Well, here I know we said we're going to leave it behind. Let's ask this question in a different way, because everyone talks about the Tampa cheating and sitting a Hart Trophy winner at a guy who's the best player in the playoffs. Won an Art Ross. Yeah, he won an Art Ross.
Yeah, he outscored McDavid that year. I mean, McDavid was hurt for a bit of time.
So what other team in the NHL would let's just say, let's play devil's advocate and say that the Tampa Bay Lightning went out and they purposefully benched Nikita Kucherov, said, go get surgery. We don't want you in the lineup this year. Let's play that game. What other team in the NHL would ever take a player of that caliber and do that? Like, can you name one? Would Washington do that with Ovechkin? Would Pittsburgh do that with Crosby? Would the Oilers do that? Would Colorado do that with McKinnon? I mean, go down the list. Is there a team in the league that would take one of the best players in the league and say, don't show up this year. We need you to sit and go have surgery right now? Like, I think that may be the answer to the question right there, is it would not happen. So why do we think they would do that with Kucherov? And I think, Eric, it's right that you're asking that question, because Ken and I have talked about this. We don't think Kucherov gets the respect he deserves. So to say that someone like that, one, that a player, a competitor like that would be like, yeah, I'd love to take a year off. Two, to think that Tampa for a second would be okay with having him out of the lineup. It really is insanity if you take a look at how good this player is. And to your point, I mean, do you have him top 5, Eric?
No question about it. I have him top 1 right now. I'm sorry to McDavid and McKinnon, but until they're scoring double the amount of points that they play in terms of games played in the playoffs, like, let's be real. Like, this guy right now, he's automatic in terms of what he provides at this time of year. He's one of the most lethal scorers I've ever seen on the power play. And it's not just because there's a ton of options around him. And I just think, like, to your point, as you were asking this question, I was going to look at the NHL standings, trying to find, like, what do you think the best team is this year that missed the playoffs? Like, and every year there's a team that we expect is going to be one of the top teams in the league that missed the playoffs. Maybe Philadelphia would be one.
My Stanley Cup final pick.
You could pick a few, okay? And let's just say, like, I don't care how good you think the Lightning were, and clearly they're great. They won the Stanley Cup last year. We've seen a lot of teams come back the following year after winning the Stanley Cup, let alone 2 months later in this format that we had, and missed the playoffs. And if you think the Lightning were feeling totally comfortable with the fact that their best player was going, A, for hip surgery, that's never a good thing after the contract he signed, and B, that he would miss the entire season, yeah, of course, they were looking at the positives of it and saying, great, we'll get him back for the playoffs, he'll be fresh, and he'll go in and rip 30 points in the first 15 games he plays. I mean, like, I get it, like, and I get how everyone feels about it, and there's a lot of validity to what people say about it, and I totally understand it, but I just, like, at the end of the day, I don't fault the Lightning for this, and I don't even fault the league for it. Like, I don't think it is this great loophole that everyone talks about. I just think it is the way the system was designed and the way it has operated since 2005, as Bill Daly said it today in his media availability. And so many teams outside of the Blackhawks and Lightning have taken advantage of it. And, just think of the teams that are life and death to make the playoffs and that are up against the cap and need to be able to take advantage of it when they lose a key player, like the Canadiens did with Gallagher this year. Like, you don't want to see them miss their opportunity just because they're missing a guy for 6 weeks. Anyways, I agree with this guy, Pooh Crumbly, who's got the best name ever. But we should move on and talk about
Yes, let's do it.
and we should never talk about this cap situation again. I'm so tired of talking about
We're
the cap.
done.
This year was a misery talking about the cap and emergency recall and all that other bullshit.
Okay. Did you swear again on the Kenny and Renny?
Yeah, I gotta bring it to you guys.
The swear jar is filling up nicely from Double E.
Here in Quebec, that's the way we talk.
That's the way they roll in Quebec. Okay, I'll do that. I'll be dropping the bombs.
No, you're too nice.
That's how it's going.
Not when you're part of the country.
We'll get back into that. I want to ask you this: Did having Dom Ducharme off the bench finally catch up to the Montreal Canadiens tonight?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think for sure when you look at the matchup situation, and again, you're not at the advantage. Even if you're great at managing that situation the way Dom did through the first three, I'm on the swearing streak. Believe me, it's not going to end for the rest of my life. Watch Spitting Chicklets. I said a couple other words that might offend some people. But no, like Ducharme did do a great job of it. Ken, I feel that too. Ducharme did do a great job of getting guys away from the matchups and getting the matchups he wanted while he was on the road. But even at that, we're talking about like 20% more than you normally would in that situation, right? So you're never going to be at an advantage when you're on visiting ice, and especially against a coach like John Cooper. But also, like, the Suzuki line generated some really quality chances at the beginning of the game and then made a costly mistake and didn't really have it for the rest of the game. They can play a lot better no matter who they're matched up against. And the Danault line has to say to themselves, you know what, if we're going to be forced to play against Yanni Gourde's line and they're going to annoy us and this and that, take the fight to them. Go play in the offensive zone. Go do what those three guys are capable of doing. It's not like Danault, Gallagher, and Lehkonen cannot produce offense. They are very capable of doing it, and if they're away from the matchup they need to be in against the point line, they need to be able to reverse the tables against a line that's very good defensively in Gourde, Coleman, and Gaudreau, the guys with the Ivy League names, and find a way to score goals and turn the tables. And I think when the Canadiens look at the tape from this game, I would bet those 2 points get made that, hey, Suzuki, your line, Toffoli, you guys can be better than this. And Gallagher, Danault, Lehkonen, we know you've been defensive mavens. We've asked you to fill this role, and you've done a great job of it. But if you're not in that role against those guys, go take it to them. You're better players offensively than they are. You know, that's not necessarily true, but it is the way you approach it if you're the Canadiens.
And I love Josh Anderson's game, Eric. I thought that he was might have been his best game of the playoffs. I know, yes, he had 2 goals against Vegas, but another 8 hits. He was physically engaged. I love that he ran Sergachev, on one of the first 3 or 4 shifts of the game. He was using his speed to get to the front of the net. That's how Montreal is going to score goals in this series. It's not just going to have to be Plinko bank shots. They got to get to the net, and that's what Josh Anderson was really doing. I loved his game, and I thought he needed... there were too many passengers for the Canadiens. Josh Anderson was not one of them, but he needs a lot of other guys going at that level, at that motor level, or else the Canadiens are going to be in trouble.
Couple things here. I'm just going to try and get to the stuff that the audience is saying. I agree with this totally. I thought Caulfield had a real off night. Clearly, his turnover was not great. I didn't like his response to it for the rest of the game. We didn't see from him what we typically see. What's your expectations of his ability to bounce back, or has he run into a formidable foe the likes of which he's never played before?
Honestly, he's not the guy I'm looking at. And the third goal is a bad pass that puts Caulfield in a terrible spot. It's not really on him. The first one, he makes a play trying to generate offense, but it's a play where he's got to know better. He's got to know that you're standing still making that pass to Petrie, and if it goes the other way, you're in a bad position to try to get back, which is what Luke Richardson was talking about. And that's, the one thing we know about Caulfield is that when he makes mistakes and he's spoken to about them, he adjusts immediately. It's something not only that Richardson says, but something that Ducharme said behind him. The guys that I got to look at on that line that were not up to their game were Tyler Toffoli and Nick Suzuki. And it's not often you could say that about either of them who are leading the Canadiens in scoring, not only in the regular season, but in these playoffs. But they were not good enough at all in this game, and they got caught kind of staring at things a couple of times in the game, and it cost them. Totally agree with Ken. Josh Anderson was, everything you want him to be in a series like this, in a game like this, ready to play right off the hop. I think the Canadiens have to look at the tape and say, where are the weak points? Where are the targeting points for us? And, I think they got to put a lot more pressure on Sergachev, on Ruda, on Savard, and even McDonough. Those are the guys that, if they're able to force them to play below the goal line, the areas where Ben Sherratt said that they had their game for portions of it, that was it. When they did those things, the goal that Sherratt scored was totally produced off Anderson and Byron Kotkaniemi, causing a bit of havoc down low, turning those guys around. And if they do more of that, they're going to be okay. One of the compelling things about this game to me is, especially when I look at the stats, is that the Canadiens had 58 hits and the Lightning own, the shot attempt / shot advantage, and they had 57 hits. This Tampa team, which is heralded as an offensive team and this and that, if you watch them play against the Islanders, they shut things down when they needed to.
Yeah.
They were extremely physical, and they made a statement in this first game that they were not going to get pushed around or intimidated the way the Canadiens' top 4 defensemen did to Vegas, Winnipeg, and Toronto before them. They executed what they wanted to, the Canadiens, in that department, but the Lightning are not going to go away or shy away from any of that. And that's why Gallagher was a target throughout the game and targeted that scrum that we talked about. And it leads to a pretty interesting dynamic moving forward in this series.
If that's the case, and if you need to, I agree. I thought Chernak was scary out there. I mean, those guys were, they wanted a piece of the Canadiens tonight. They were going to go and they were going to punch the bully in the mouth. I agree with this statement by General Imlerith, who says he thinks Armia is more crucial to the structure of the Habs than most people think. I completely agree with this, and this is nothing against Jake Evans, but I thought that the times where they got down in the zone and started trying to do the things that we've seen that fourth line do, I thought when the puck went to Jake Evans, I think he just plays a different style that they maybe weren't used to. And that what Armia does is, with that big body, the way he works down below that goal line, is he buys those other guys time. Clearly, Stahl and Perry aren't successful players because of their speed anymore. But when they get into the right spot, they know how to hold on to the puck. They know how to buy time. They know how to grind it. Armia has figured out how to do that as a younger man. And I really thought that was missing on that fourth line. And we've talked about it's one of the few misses for that line tonight, and that they didn't outdo the other team's fourth line. That's Kenny's, in my belief, on this night. How much of a difference could he make and that line make if they get back to what we've expected from them, if he's able to get them back to that, Eric?
Big difference, and a lot less about Jake Evans and much more about Yoel Armia and the skill set that he brings and the size and speed and puck possession ability that he has versus Evans's game, which is a little more direct, a little more speedy, a little more give and go style. Armia is a guy who holds onto the puck, and that fit really well with Perry and Stahl in terms of wearing things down, behind the net. I saw that comment that just rolled in on the Gallagher thing, but you have to consider that point in the game, the fact that the Canadiens are getting a power play and they're down. That's why you didn't see much come of it.
Take a number.
You got to pick your spots. That's a veteran kind of thing. But Armia is he's gone from a guy that is extremely frustrating to watch to a guy that has been extremely effective in these playoffs, doing exactly the things that have lacked in his game that have made him frustrating to watch. His puck possession and his ability to finish plays and his smarts and his intensity. He's kind of put all those things together, whereas always there seems to be one thing missing from the equation that leads to that frustration. That's been a situation that's followed him around his entire career. But you looked at one shift that in the third period that Perry, Stahl, and Evans had, and it really made a difference in terms of wearing the Lightning down a little bit. And if they could have had 4 or 5 of those shifts in the game, it might have been a different hockey game. And if the Canadiens capitalized on a few chances early on in the game, it could have been a different hockey game. But one thing's for sure, if they continue to manage the puck the way they did at the offensive blue line and the neutral zone, it ain't going to be a different hockey game.
Yeah, quick one for me, Eric. Sean and I just discussed this on our Sound On, and I do think part of the factor on the face-off play goal was that Petry's stick got caught into Foley's skate, and that is what prevented him from getting it in the lane. And obviously we know he's playing with the hand issue as well. But why are face-off plays continually ending up in the back of the net against the Canadiens in these playoffs?
Well, I think, for one, you look at the teams that are scoring them, like Vegas is excellent at it, and Tampa is just as good as anyone at any aspect of the game. I think at that stage of the game, and the reason that goal happens, and the reason why it usually happens in general, is a communication thing, right? It's a focus thing. You get on the ice, you make sure you call out the assignments, you make sure everyone knows what they're doing and executes their point. I know it's frustrating to watch those plays end up in the back of the net, but I'll tell you one thing. It's not as if the Canadiens didn't plan for a face-off play that involves Nikita Kucherov shooting.
Exactly.
And I don't care if you get your stick caught into Foley's skate or you lost your stick completely and it ends up in the corner. If that's Jeff Petry's guy, like the one thing that you cannot allow when you're playing against Point, Kucherov, and Palat is a shot from Nikita Kucherov from the middle of the slot. Like, you cannot allow a clean shot to get to your net from that guy. So,
oh God, no, yeah,
that's a communication failure. That's a focus failure. They weren't all on the same page in terms of what they were going to do. And on Suzuki's end, let's remember, he lost the faceoff clean. He's 21 years old. He's playing in his first game in the Stanley Cup final in an opposing rink in a situation where the Canadiens are losing and the night is not going particularly well for him. And I think, you got to understand that stuff. I think it's normal. I'm more interested in seeing how he responds to it. As knowing the character that he has, the intensity, the type of player he is, he'll rise to the occasion and have a big game too. So, I think the Lightning are great guys.
Oh yeah. Hang on 1 second. Sorry, Pooh Crumbly, please explain yourself, because so far the start of that comment is absolutely ridiculous. Because Tampa Bay, I don't know what game you were watching, if that was your opinion of what Tampa Bay played. Unless you expected them to put up 10, how could you not have been impressed by how Tampa Bay played?
I thought it was as good as I think it was. Honestly, it was the best game I've seen them play in the playoffs.
Me too.
It was better than any game I've seen them play against the Islanders, where they force things through the middle quite a bit, that if they get into those habits again against the Canadiens, it'll be a long series. I just thought they executed on if they had a whiteboard in their room and put things on it before the game, they literally checked off every box, from getting to Price, from getting the lead, from keeping the crowd on their side, from taking advantage of opportunities, to breaking the PK, exactly. Especially the way they did it, right? I know Stamkos scored from an odd angle, but if you go back to their first power play, it was a clinic out there. And there was one point where the Canadiens were clearly just content to be a little more passive and take away Point as the bumper option, and Paul Byron was kind of glued to him. And Paul Byron got caught puck watching to the point where Braden Point got an amazing chance, right in the middle of the slot.
Yeah.
The announcers were saying that Price got a piece of it, but I think he healed it wide. That power play, don't give them opportunities, because they're going to score against the greatest penalty kill. You could have the Soviet penalty kill out there from the 1970s. They're scoring, close to half the time if they get those opportunities. So wasn't surprised to see Stamkos finally ended on the 33rd penalty. The Canadiens had killed off 32 in a row. They were inevitably going to let one up.
What blew me away, Eric, was the puck movement that they were able to establish, and the lanes that they found in that Canadian structure that we hadn't seen exist before that. I mean, there's one play, you may remember this from the first period. Ken and I went over it. Hedman has the puck on the point. He fires it over to Stamkos, who looks like he's going to take the one-timer. and one time passes it right straight across the ice through the heart, like right straight through the box of the Canadiens over to Kucherov, who goes to take a one-timer, and one time slap passes it right to the front of the net to Killorn, who just barely
that was a goal
directing it in.
That was a goal, and I don't know how Killorn normally would not miss that. By the way, that he left the game after blocking that Petrie shot is a story to follow here moving forward. I have a question for you guys. I'm wondering from your angle.
Sorry, hang on a second. Ray-Ban, no one is saying the series is over. At least not any of us.
The series isn't over. No,
it's one game.
This question kind of tees it up pretty well here for you guys.
I think he's just saying that to anyone.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Do you think it's good? Do you think it's good that the Canadiens kind of got slapped in the mouth here? Like
I do. I don't.
People will. No. Okay.
I do personally. Hey, Sean, you go ahead first, and then you go first.
I'll go first. Eric, I said it while you were coming on. The Montreal Canadiens, I thought after their first game against Vegas, looked really confident to me. It's one thing that stood out because I thought, they're in trouble. And what was the storyline? That the North Division couldn't hang with the other divisions, and that's what I think a lot of people were thinking we were seeing when they lost that 4-1 game to Vegas. But they came out afterwards and had just absolute confidence. I didn't see that tonight. I saw a bunch of guys out there who looked like they just got hit by a freight train. I think the realization of what they are up against in this Tampa Bay team kind of hit them like a bucket of cold water in the face. And I'd said this. John Cooper went in there and clearly looked at all the things that Vegas succeeded against the Canadiens with, them leaving the points open, their structure on the faceoffs, and exploited all those things that Vegas was able to exploit, and yet they still went out and did all the things that they did well, moving the puck on the penalty kill, getting to the front of the net, doing really well in the defensive zone. And then they basically went and took all the Montreal strengths away from them and made them their own. Like that, to me, was a demoralizing loss. That wasn't like we got slapped, let's get going. That was like what's left to stand on at this stage. And I'm not saying the Canadiens are out of this, but that to me is more than just a loss. That was a loss that leaves you questioning whether you belong on the same ice as that group, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely disagree. And this is a team that's 11-3 in their last 14 games. The Islanders lost 8-0 and won the next game where everyone thought they were dead to rights. So for me, they'd
already established in that series, though, what worked against
doesn't matter to me.
The Canadiens need to figure that out. They need to figure it out now.
No, I don't disagree with that, Sean, whatsoever. But this is a team that's here for a reason. You're not just going to fold up the tent because you got your ass kicked in game one. I mean, that's not how they roll. They're 4 lines. They've got 4 great defensemen, and they've got a great goaltender. I mean, I'll put
it this way. The Canadiens got to figure this out right now, because if they go down 2-0 to the Tampa Bay Lightning, I do not think they're coming back in this series.
It's not a sense
of urgency here.
It's not a science experiment for them to figure it out. They've had the recipe for the entire playoffs. You watch them play much better than they played in this game. They did not play anywhere near their best. They were kind of deer in the headlines to start.
Guys, I lost Pooh Crumbly. Pooh Crumbly.
Yeah, you better work a little harder.
They were kind of deers in the headlights in the first few minutes of the game. They looked like a little overwhelmed, not by Tampa Bay, but by the situation. And it even started kind of in warm up, like Shea Weber, falling on
slipped on the puck. Price got smoked in the neck.
I just think the Canadiens are not rattled here. I think it was a good thing for them they got smacked in the face or had a splash of cold water their way. I do agree with you, Sean, just as Ken did, that there is an urgency for them to figure it out. Josh Anderson said that the next game is a must-win game for them. Of course it is.
Yeah.
But I also do believe, after watching them establish the template that won them so many games coming into this, they're going to come out with something a lot better. Whether or not it's good enough to beat Tampa, and Vasilevsky, for that matter, is up for debate, because I think Tampa's better than any team they've faced and better than any other team that came into this these playoffs. So, but I do think it was good for the Canadiens, and I think one of the things that's been good for them all along is people doubting them, and right now there will be that much more doubt about them coming into the next game.
We thought the exact same thing after Vegas won game 1. Oh, well, they broke the mold, and now they're not going to be able to bounce back. What did they do? They scored first in game 2, and it was right back on, Sean. That's why I think, yes, Tampa is a different team than Vegas. They've won, sure. But if Montreal scores first in game 2, we don't think they're not going to be able to hold a lead. I mean, they've been thriving when they've got the lead all series long. So I think they absolutely have to score first. I mean, that's not the only way they can win. That certainly will enhance their chances. And Eric and Sean, you're right too. I mean, Tampa is a different animal. They know how to win, right? This is a team that knows how to win. They've won recently, and they know the recipe for success for them as well. And again, Pooh Crumbly, Montreal was a little bit passive, but that was because Tampa dictated the play. It wasn't because they played poorly. They absolutely imposed their will in this hockey game. That had nothing to do with Montreal. That had everything to do with Tampa Bay at least in the early first and second periods for me.
Yeah,
did you see it differently?
No, it had everything to do also with giving up a 2-0 lead, right? Like,
sure.
The Canadiens were okay in the game, and they were even okay at 2-1, but there is a realization, whatever they knew coming into the game was really reinforced with the way it went, right? Like, they knew that if they made mistakes at the offensive blue line, they were going to be in big trouble. And the fact that they only made a couple of them and they both resulted in goals right away, that's a wake-up call. It reinforces how important it is to take care of that element of the game. It's basically what my whole column is for game 1. I wish I could have been writing about something more exciting than puck management, but that was where the game was lost for the Canadiens. That was the storyline for them. And Chris Johnson, I'm sure, will have a great piece on what Tampa did well and what makes them such a formidable opponent. And, that's covered off in my piece too. But we got a long series ahead. That's belief. I believe the Canadiens, the determination that they have in that room and the people they have. I agree that Pooh Crumbly is probably. We're saying his name wrong too. Oh no, we're not.
No, it's Pooh Crumbly. I think Je suis Sean Reynolds got it right. Yeah, he's going. Listen, Pooh Crumbly.
There's a wake up coming for you, but we appreciate the passion.
We got to stop saying this guy's name.
Yeah,
we got to change his name. Pooh
Quick
Crumbly.
one here. Sorry, Sean, I don't want to intervene, but somebody said that they thought that Price looked nervous. I think that is absolute baloney. Price doesn't get nervous. He was not nervous tonight. Yes, he gave up 5, but it doesn't matter if Price gives up 0 or 5. He's going to be the exact same way for game 2. He's not nervous. He knows he needs to play great, and I expect he'll play great.
I think it's as simple as figuring out the neutral zone. Like, they got to win the neutral zone battle. That's where the Montreal Canadiens turned the tide as quickly as they did in that series against the Vegas Golden Knights. They did not have any piece of that neutral zone tonight. Tampa was absolutely dominant there. And I guess the reason why I say that is it's just like there is a sense of urgency. They got to get back. I think they have to win tomorrow. I think they're in serious trouble if they don't. And the only reason I say that about them getting the spanking they had is because I say it in a way that, it was a 5-1 game. And they lost 4-1 to Vegas. People on the surface may not think that's much of a different thing. I thought it was a really different thing because I thought, like I'd said, Tampa did everything that they wanted to do. They were able to exploit the Habs the way that Vegas did. So that clearly their coaching showed up. Their own game showed up in that series, and they took away the Canadian strengths. That's a lot for the Canadiens to turn around for game 2. I'm not saying it's impossible to have it happen. It just means that they better hope that tonight they just laid an egg and they can come out and perform from one man down to the rest of the roster in the next game, because that's, in my opinion, what it's going to take for them.
Vasilevsky was really good too, eh?
That's okay. We got to talk about that before we go, because someone was saying they didn't think Vasilevsky was that good. All I've said about the Canadiens tonight, there was the Shea Weber chance. There was a bunch of chances there tonight that if he lets those in, it's an entirely different game. Maybe the Canadiens wake up. The Canadiens were sleeping. Vasilevsky, I thought, did his job at the right time to make sure they didn't wake up.
Yeah, he's solid, man. He's such a good goalie. Like, He came up with great saves, not only on the breakaways for Gallagher and Weber. He made a bunch of them on Josh Anderson and stopped Cole Caulfield early in the game, and Tyler Toffoli on a couple of good chances. Like, those were,
shaky when.
Sorry, like he wasn't shaky at all. He played really well. So did Price. There was no, if it wasn't for Price, this game has an even worse scoreline. He made a couple of unbelievable saves, including the one on Stamkos, the glove, but a lot of saves that a lot of people would slough off and just think it's casual carry. Like, he makes hard saves look easy. That's what he does when he's at his best. I didn't think he had any issue in this game. Goaltending is going to be great for both teams. And I'm reading this comment too. Tampa is better. It's the elephant in the room. We know Tampa's better. we know
the
Tampa's
defending
better
champs,
than everyone.
yes.
We know that Vegas was better than Montreal too. We know that Toronto was better, Winnipeg better on paper. Doesn't matter, man. Like, what matters is how you play and how bad you want it. Like, that's what this Canadiens run has been all about. That's what they need to get back to. And it requires playing a smart, cerebral game, and they didn't have that in this one. Too many details by the wayside and too many passengers, and the Canadiens are not a team that can survive with passengers. Like, that's not who they are. That's not how they're built. So they will come back, whether it leads to a win in game 2 or not. They will come back with a much better game than they played in game 1. That's my belief.
What do you think of the quick one? Toffoli, had a good chance early, missed the net high. Looked like the Canadiens were trying to shoot high on Vasilevsky. Is that the scouting report, or?
I guess so. It's apparently 26 of the goals that he's allowed have come in high. I mean, like, I always laugh when I see these numbers as if they're not the same for virtually every goaltender. Like it's like years ago, like, we figured Carey Price out. You got to score him on the blocker side. Yeah, because there's so many goalies that are better on the blocker side than they are on the glove side. I mean, it's the same. I'm not going to swear, but it's the same nonsense, like, all the time.
Good restraint, good discipline.
A guy who's 6'3" and moves as athletically as Andrei Vasilevsky probably has the bottom half of the net covered pretty well. Guys who are Vezina candidates perennially and have won that trophy are pretty good at taking care of the bottom half of the net in terms of their structure and the way the position is played. Was the scouting report for them to shoot high, and was that where they were targeting? I don't know. You guys have played hockey probably as long as I have, which is at least 30 years. As a guy who scored goals and was pretty good at it and a good shot, if I got a chance to shoot, I wasn't thinking about, where's the goalie weak? I was thinking about, where's the hole that I'm looking for that I'm going to shoot at right now.
Cole Caulfield. I shoot for the back of the net. I don't shoot. I don't shoot to a position.
And how am I going to disguise it too? Because normally as a shooter, I was looking somewhere and shooting somewhere else. But I just think, probably the scouting report says shoot high on him, shoot high blocker. But I don't think that rules kind of how the best shooters, maybe it rules for Paul Byron or a volume shooter. Paul Byron's a bad example. A guy like Brendan Gallagher is a volume shooter. But I don't think it rules for a guy like Cole Caulfield or Tyler Toffoli.
What's going to make Toffoli more dangerous? I found them to be not as dangerous as in the Jet series. Sorry, Sean.
No problem.
Or do you see it differently? I
don't know what his health level is. I assume that everyone's banged up to a degree. If he's got something that he's going on in his lower body, he's not, his movement is not the best part of his game. I think what makes Toffoli a really dangerous player is his ability to go unmarked in certain areas where he can get his shot off, which is quite deceptive and quite accurate and quite effective. He needs to do more of it now. It's going through the Vegas series to now, there's been a bit of a lull in his play. I think he benefits a little bit more sometimes from playing with players that are more capable of generating off the cycle, where he can find those dead spaces. Playing with Suzuki and Caulfield, it's not a cycle line. Caulfield is not a guy who can get implicated on the physical side and create those kind of cycle opportunities. And Suzuki will slow the game down, but not necessarily play it in those trenches. Not because he's soft or unwilling. It's just it's not where he generates the majority of his offense from. So I just think Toffoli needs to be more opportunistic. The one or two chances that he gets in a game, because his foot speed doesn't necessarily get him to the places you're going to score from. More than that, he needs to score. He needs to score when he gets those chances. He had a really good prime grade A chance to score a goal, and he wasn't able to put it in. And I think if you ask Tyler Toffoli about that, he'll say, yeah, I'm shooting on one of the best goalies in the world, and he'll say, I need to score. I need to score on those opportunities when I get them, and they come so seldomly in the playoffs. That's what he's here for, and that's what he's done all year, and he's going to have to be better in that department.
Eric, last question. Do you have any information on this? 10,500 no? Okay.
I know it's like the rumors are flying all over the place. I asked the Canadiens, people got in touch with the government. I have no doubt that there's hardline negotiations happening on both ends. I think even both parties would like to see the capacity increase dramatically. I've said it before with you guys. I just don't want to take any steps backwards in this pandemic. I'm so tired of like moving forward and then inevitably coming backwards and starting all over again. I don't think that'll be the case anyways, but I hope it works out, and I hope it works out for the fans who get to see this for the first time in 28 years and want to be in the building and want to pay the astronomical prices to do it. And yeah, happy birthday, Kenny, once again. Yeah. But yeah, no, we don't have news on that, and I don't anticipate we'll have news on it until later today, because it's 12:25 your time, 1:25 my time, and it's already Tuesday. So maybe we'll get something later today.
Sounds good. All
Excellent
right,
effort.
Let's shut it down here tonight. Awesome job, Eric. It was great to have you as always. Everyone check him out on Spitting Chicklets tomorrow. Kenny, phenomenal job as usual. The crowd, hey, if you're like Pooh Crumbly and I had you at some point and I lost you, come back again. Give me a chance to win you back, okay? Pooh Crumbly, I'm asking you, come back, and I'll give you some takes that you can get on side with. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for feeding the show like you always do. Great stuff. We'll be back after game 2. Looking forward to spending more time with you. Hopefully Eric can make it back. Eric, we're starting these shows later so that at least you've got the option of getting in a little bit earlier than you can. So, or than you've been able to in the past. That's great. And one more game here, and then I'll be back with you. And I guess it looks like I'll be going to Momeso's on my day off. That's how it'll have to go. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate your time. We will see you after game 2.